I rewatched The Fault in Our Stars today. I said I was ready to remember, so I watched, and I remembered. I remembered when the movie came out, I was 28 years old, and I was suffering from an unknown illness that I feared would win. I remember thinking that there is no movie that truly captures these feelings that I have no idea how to express to you. I'll try my best. I wasn't depressed about death. I wasn't scared about death. In all honesty, I was more scared of living than of dying. Everybody thinks that I'm so wise and brave for having gone through what I did, but you out there who have lived your whole lives knowing that you had to keep living, you are a badass to me. And I could say that honestly. Living, you guys, is fucking terrifying. Life is hard, but death doesn't always have to be hard. Not unless you don't live before you die. I'll spare you the gory details. No one wants to hear that, not the least of which myself. I'll talk instead about what it felt like. I think that's what people most want to know, what they ask me. It felt like the encore of a concert. The moments when you know that you must take in everything and cherish every drop of those beautiful songs before the curtain falls for the very last time. The moments when, ironically, you feel more alive than ever. I'm not trying to be cocky or superior. I'm not immune to fear. I'm absolutely not immune to fear. I was terrified. I just wasn't terrified of dying. I was terrified of not being able to live, of not having lived my life to the fullest before I could no longer. So I lived. I lived more in the span of those 3 years than I always, the worrywart, the person who always came up with worst case scenarios and ran hamster wheels in my head and questioned myself. Was never one for flights of fancy, for, taking a risk. Until then, I lived more in those 3 years than I had in the 25 years that came before it. I danced, I laughed, I loved, and I wrote. I wrote like it was a mission. I wrote because I knew, or at least I hoped, that my words would outlive me. To quote The Fault in Our Stars, I feared oblivion more than anything. I feared a world where someday there would not be anyone left to remember that I had ever existed. And that's terrifying to think about, but we shouldn't, because There's nothing that we can do to avoid that. There is not anything within our control, and that will only prevent us from living a life that we can remember fondly and passionately and be proud of. Oblivion, after all, it's inevitable. There will be a day when there is no more life left in the universe, but knowing that, we wake up every morning and we live anyway. And that is one of the bravest things that I know. I remember dancing at a gay bar with a total stranger, a girl with pink stripes in her hair, a nose ring, curvy body, lots of freckles, while a karaoke singer belted out on the stage, "I'm coming out. I want the world to know. I'm gonna let it show." And I remember, don't tell my mom, going back to her apartment that night. Not supposed to go back to the apartment of a girl that you just met at a bar at 3 o'clock in the morning. But none of those rules mattered anymore. Because if you think about it, really, what is the worst that could have happened? I was going to die anyway. I remember marching in the Boston Pride parade, even though every bone in my body felt as if it would break at any moment of that step. I remember staring at the stars while meandering down the paths around my shabby Providence studio apartments in an old factory that had been converted to artist lofts. I pretended to be an artist more than anything. Pouring my heart and soul out on the phone to strangers thousands of miles away. Strangers I did not anticipate ever meeting. And maybe I never will, even though we're still friends today. But these people who I met in that time, none of which lived near me, because it's so hard to find people like this anywhere. They understood me more than my friend who I've known since kindergarten, because they knew what it is like to see an end in sight. I remember my heart beating, pounding out of my chest, my hands shaking as I thought about making a phone call that I thankfully never had to make. Calling a dear friend of mine to ask them to, there's no easy way to say this, to ask them to plan my funeral. I remember for the first time feeling more grown up than my parents. Trying so hard to be strong for them, to give them some measure of hope and belief in themselves, that they had done everything that they could with me, that even in my absence, at too young of an age, that they could go on to live without regrets. I don't pretend to have the answers, you guys. I don't. Sick people, we're not prodigies of wisdom and inspiration. We're broken, shallow people just like every single person on this planet. We listen to cheesy music, we watch reality television, we make really bad puns, we eat junk food, and we try our ever-living best to avoid thinking about the things that are simply too hard to think about. And there's nothing wrong with that. There isn't. Please believe me, there is nothing wrong with finding whatever joy that you can find, however you can find that joy. But since I know that you do want advice from people in my position, all I can say is, even though it seems like it's obvious, you would think it would be, it's not, because we're in denial, myself included. We're all in denial, but my advice to you is simply to live your life as if it will not last forever. I can't tell you how to do that. In the end, what matters to me is not that important. What matters to everyone else is not going to be what matters to you. And that's okay. What matters to you is what is most important in how you live your life. Please believe me when I say this. I know it can be hard. But please believe me. Please, just not asking you to be selfish, but honor yourself. Live your life in a way that honors what you value, what's important to you, not what's important to society or what you think that you should do or be. Live life knowing that one day you are going to die. But that doesn't have to be scary. Not if, when that day comes, you know in your heart that you have lived. Just to reassure you, I don't plan on going away anytime soon. My prognosis has changed. Who knows what the future holds? I'm still nowhere near the paragon of health. God knows not. But I should, stick around to annoy the fuck out of you for a good long while. But when the time does come for me, and it will come, I know that I don't have to face it with fear. For I have lived. And if by some trick of fate that my time does come before yours, I just hope that you can continue what I and so many others have started. Just fucking live a life that you can be proud of.